Good evening. Dreaming Green is a Miami-based grassroots nonprofit organization that is dedicated to educating the community about conservation, sustainability, and climate change. We're perhaps best known for our Green Schools Challenge program, which is currently in its 6th year, serving 165 K-12 schools in Miami-Dade County. We educate youngsters about environmental and energy challenges by getting them involved in real-world solutions to those challenges at school. And we also help them to measure and quantify the impact of their actions, which you'll soon learn more about. I hope you'll agree that Dreaming Green is a fitting name for a nonprofit dedicated to inspiring youngsters to take action against climate change. However, the name Dreaming Green means a great deal to me personally, because I'm not always dreaming green. In fact, I wasn't an environmental advocate for my whole life. I grew up here in Miami, and my father is an entrepreneur. When I was 8 years old, he started a chemicals and packaging distribution business. And by the way, he's going to kill me for showing that picture, because it's always okay for him to take pictures, but not to take pictures of him. Anyway, this is my first order, which I generated when I was in college on an internship. You can see that my father had it laminated for me, and he had everyone in the office sign their name, give me their best wishes. I was so proud of the fact that I had sold 550 pounds of sodium ferrocyanide, despite the fact that I had no idea what sodium ferrocyanide was. But don't worry, it sounds a lot scarier than it is, because sodium ferrocyanide is actually a food ingredient. But my ignorance goes to show that I wasn't quite ready to dedicate my career to protecting the environment. In fact, I wasn't even ready to dedicate my career to the family business. I had gone to law school, and like many in our community who are young professionals, I decided that I would relocate to New York City and try to make it in the Big Apple. I accepted a position at a large law firm where 100-hour work weeks were quite commonplace. And despite the hard work and long hours, I still found some time to paint, which has long been a passion of mine. And as you can see in this picture, I was fearless, perhaps slightly deranged from the long work hours, and I was ready to conquer the world. And then the world changed overnight on September 11th, 2001. The world seemed completely different to me, and I realized that I wanted to dedicate myself to something larger than myself, and dedicate my career to something bigger than me. So I also became extremely obsessed with our dependence on foreign oil and fossil fuels because of the implications for our national security and, of course, also for climate change. So like a young corporate attorney, I figured, well, maybe the best way for me to address these problems would be to work with energy companies, hopefully renewable energy companies, and maybe influence some things and affect some change. And little did I know I'd soon get an opportunity to do just that, or at least so I thought. It was Thanksgiving night in 2001, and I got a phone call as I was wrapping up Thanksgiving dinner, and there was a partner on the line. She said, "Happy Thanksgiving, Nick, and I need you to be in Houston by the morning. Packed for a week." I was extremely excited. Although this would have traumatized most associates, my assignment was to advise a very important client about a loan that they wanted to make to an energy company that was in distress. I was overjoyed, because this wasn't just any energy company. This was one of the largest energy companies in the world. They were on the top 10 of the Fortune 500 list. And the best part of all was that they had vast interest in renewable power, like wind energy. So I could hardly sit still on my way down to Houston on that plane. And I was giddy with excitement when I walked into the gleaming tower of the Enron building. Well, you all know how the story goes from here, and it wasn't a particularly, it doesn't have a happy ending. Enron was a sham and a house of cards, and they were defrauding their investors, their partners, even their employees, bleeding them dry. And so when I got back to New York, I was beginning to get a little disillusioned with my legal career. I grew restless and anxious, and I started to wonder whether this really is the right way for me to affect change with respect to fossil fuels and renewable energy and climate change. And I started to dread going to work in the morning, in part because I thought that I kept picturing myself getting blown up in the morning on the ride in on the subway to a job that provided me with very little fulfillment. A horrible end. And so I decided that it was time to get out of New York and perhaps look for another career. So, you know Pablo Picasso. He had a blue period. He had a blue period, and during this period, he was disillusioned. He was looking for meaning after the death of a close friend, and it was one of the most transformative periods in his career. Well, I had a green period, and it was during this time that I started to dream in green. I would sit at my desk thinking about ways in which I could switch careers, find another job, get out of New York City. And since I had a legal background, I thought, well, it makes sense to become a lawyer for perhaps the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, maybe join an environmental advocacy group like the Natural Resources Defense Council. And I sent out dozens of resumes, and they all came back rejected. They weren't impressed with my Enron experience? I mean, come on. So one day I just said, enough. I'm not going to wait any longer. I decided to move back to Miami and work in my family business. And I was actually excited about this because, after all, we were in chemical and packaging distribution, and these were some of the dirtiest industries with the largest environmental footprint that you can imagine. So this was a great opportunity for me to affect some change and make a difference. Well, I was in the process of reformulating my career. So I reached out to my customers, and I tried to help them reformulate their products so that they could use more environmentally friendly chemicals and materials. Most of them laughed at me. They said they were unwilling to spend a penny more for a green product. They also thought that the formulations they had been using for many years were tried and true, and why mess around with a good thing? So, final thing they told me was, you're wasting your time because there's no consumer demand for green products. And I had hit another obstacle on my road to dedicating my career to sustainability. And this was an unsettling one for me because, I'd just come back to Miami with all this enthusiasm and optimism, and, I looked around and there weren't that many people who were interested in sustainability, green products, and, I started to search high and low for like-minded individuals who shared my passion and enthusiasm, and I finally found them. They were a fraction of my age, but their creativity and enthusiasm was boundless, and they were willing to take action. They wanted to take action. And this is what prompted me to co-found Dream Green and develop the Green Schools Challenge program, which is premised on the idea that kids are the most powerful catalyst for change in a society. So we challenge those kids to go out and find ways to reduce energy consumption, reduce water consumption, reduce waste, and respond to climate change. So they did things like turning off lights. They turned up the thermostat to save on cooling costs. They unplugged computers and electronics when these items were not in use. And this was just the tip of the iceberg. They went out and formed green teams to patrol the schools for violators of their new energy policy. They made posters, and they gave presentations to mobilize their classmates to take action against climate change. And I was blown away by this because the learning didn't stop in school. When they got home, they would apply the lessons of the Green Schools Challenge for their parents, for their grandparents, their friends, saving thousands of dollars in energy bills. We got calls from parents saying, "My kid reduced my electricity bill by 20%. Why didn't you do something about the credit card bills?" So in any event, after they were done helping mom and dad, they'd go on and teach their siblings. And I don't recommend you try this with your kids. But I love this slide because it shows that it's never too early to conserve. It also shows that these known low-cost solutions that these kids were implementing are so easy that even the youngest among us in our society are able to implement them. And despite the fact that these are small steps, baby steps, if you will, they produce outsized results. Since we started Dreaming Green in the Green Schools Challenge, we've saved $2.4 million for the Miami-Dade County Public School District in energy savings alone. We conserved, it gets better. We conserved 5.5 million kilowatt hours of electricity. And through actions like these, and also by planting trees and recycling paper and other materials, we reduced or offset 13.7 million pounds of carbon dioxide emissions. That's the equivalent of taking 775 homes off the electricity grid for an entire year. And we're only getting started. We started with 3 schools 5 years ago. We're now with 165 schools. And our goal is to keep going, to inspire as many children as possible so that they can compound the results that we're already seeing. Now, this was just amazing to me because I set out to inspire kids, and in the process, they inspired me. They taught me. Because what I realized is when we told them to go out and hunt for savings opportunities, they were identifying elements of our built environment that were antiquated and in need of change. Inefficient light bulbs, toilets and faucets that were using too much water, insulation that wasn't doing its job. And I realized, and I had an idea, and this idea helped me find my dream job, because I realized that I could leverage my distribution capabilities and bring green building products here to South Florida. Unlike with chemicals and packaging materials, when I didn't find any demand, there was actually some demand for green building products. There wasn't a whole lot of it, but there was something to work with. And so my brother and I, we founded Alterna. And Alterna's mission is to support the emerging green building movement by making state-of-the-art green building products affordable and available here in South Florida. Now, it took me over 30 years to find my calling and the appropriate outlet for me to express my passion for conservation. Throughout my career, I had been looking for complex solutions to some of the most daunting challenges facing our society, like climate change. And, you know, I tried to affect change on government policy when I wanted to work for the EPA, and I tried to change whole industries that didn't want to budge when I tried to help reformulate products for our customers in the chemical business, and these solutions were out of reach. They were unrealistic. But what was realistic were the simple solutions, the baby steps. And through Dreaming Green and Alterna, I'm finally able to make a difference and reduce our dependence on resources that are just time for the dustbin of history. And I urge all of you to forget about the complexity of the problem and start taking steps right now, one student at a time, 1 kilowatt hour at a time, 1 gallon at a time of water to make the world a better place for our children. Thank you and have a great evening.